that don't live in the big communities, to bring them together on Shabbat, to connect with them so that they should connect with their heritage. It's really a very special thing to do because together we're like little magnets. Each of us are a little magnet. And when we find each other, we connect very easily. So a number of years ago, in 1997, there was two young men. And one summer, for 3 summers, they went to Alaska. What were they doing in Alaska? Well, every single summer since the 1950s, the Lubavitcher Rebbe would send out young yeshiva students to all of the far cities, the cities that don't have communities, the tiny little communities all over the world where there could be 1 Jew, 2 Jews, 3 Jews, and they come to these communities every summer, and the first thing they do is they go to the newspaper and they say, listen, we're rabbinical students visiting town. We want the people to know that we're looking for Jews. Okay? The next thing they do, they go to the mayor's office and they say, we're rabbinical students visiting town. We want the Jews to know that we're visiting and looking to meet with Jews. And imagine, since the 1950s they've been doing this. So every year, they go into the stores, into the cigar shops. They roll down their windows and they ask people if they're Jewish. And they write down, they have a log book. And the next year when the boys come to that same community, they call them, they say, we're back in town. We're talking about cities all over the US, all over the world, that maybe have 2, 3, 5, 10 Jews in the whole city. There's no Jewish community, there's no synagogue there. But the Rebbe really wanted to reach every single Jew in the world. And these young boys, 2 of them, they go in Paris, and they were in Alaska, and they were visiting the far northwest corner of Alaska, where the population is mostly Eskimos. And they were looking to see if there were any Jews there. And they come to the mayor's office, and they ask, excuse me, sir, do you know if there's any Jews that live here? He says, I don't think that there are any Jews in this town. But you know what? If you're already here visiting rabbis, why don't you come to the elementary school and speak to the children? Because probably most of these children have never met a rabbi like you. Let them be exposed to other cultures. So they come, the 2 boys, they come, they're 19 years old, and they come and they're speaking to this Eskimo populated school. For the most part, it was Eskimo, the tribe of the Eskimos. And they were speaking to grades 2 to grades 8. They assembled in one big room, and they were talking. And they spoke about their Jewish traditions. And at the end of the presentation, they asked the following question. My dear children, now you've heard about what the Jewish people are. Have any of you ever met a Jew? And one girl in the back of the room puts up her hand. So he says, and you, my dear, when did you meet a Jew? Who's the Jew that you've ever met? She says, points to the back of the room at the 5th grade teacher. That's my mother. She's Jewish. So they can't believe their luck. They just met 2 Jews in the northwest tip of the United States, all the way to Alaska. So they're not sure what to do now. What do we do? So they go over to the mother, they start speaking to her, and the mother says, you know, I'm from the 48 states, I'm actually from New York. I'm a nice Jewish girl, but I love nature. And so when I was young, I moved to Alaska and I fell in love with a native. And we've been living there ever since. And I had a daughter 7 years ago. She's here. We're both Jewish. But do me a favor, young men, young rabbis. If you could just do me a favor. I know you're going to leave tomorrow. and my daughter and I are going to be here, and we're not going to be exposed to any more Judaism until maybe the next time you come. Will you please leave my daughter with one message? One message, so that she could remain, she could long, she could yearn, she could hold on to her Jewish identity. So the rabbis, when they shared the story later, they said their minds started racing quickly. What are you going to share with a young 7-year-old girl when you only see her one time, mazel tov. When you only see her one time and you're not going to see her again, what do you share? So you know what they said? These were amazing rabbis. Young Chabad, 19-year-old boys who learned in yeshiva. Their minds were working well. They look at the girl and they bend down and they look her in the eye and they say, you know there's a Jewish tradition that's only for Jewish women. And this tradition is called lighting the Shabbat candles. I want you, my dear girl, let's say her name was Sarah. I want you, Sarah, every Friday before Shabbat comes in to light 2 candles with your mom in honor of the Shabbos. And then they told her this. They said, and I want to tell you something, young Sarah. I want you to know that the whole world is going to be waiting for you. Shabbos comes. Because, do you know where the first place in the world that Shabbat comes in? The young girl was very bright and she said, probably somewhere in Australia or maybe New Zealand. He said, yes. So the Jews in New Zealand and the Jews in Australia, they bring in Shabbos first. And then after them, the Jews in Asia bring in Shabbos. And then the Jews in Europe bring in Shabbos. And then the Jews in Africa and the other side of Europe. And then the East